Hi there, welcome to Create with Copper. In this video we're going to look at sawing and piercing sheet metal. It's not a difficult technique to get the hang of, so I'll show you the tools you need and then go through a few tips and tricks to help you. And if you're new here and want to learn more techniques and tutorials, click on that subscribe button. Let's get started. So the first thing you're going to need is your saw frame. This is a fairly standard frame. It's adjustable at the top, so you can take different widths of saw blade. The width here is the limit, as this will dictate how far in you can saw on any sheet. You can get wider ones, but they're a little bit less controllable. So this is quite a useful sort of starting frame. And the next thing you're going to need is your saw blades. Now there's a large number of brands available. Some swear by one brand, others by another. But it could be worth getting a decent brand as they do tend to last longer. Over time they'll either blunt or break, but you'd expect better brands to blunt slower and break less. It's also worth getting a decent number so you've always got them to hand. Now they come in a variety of sizes, the smallest being 8/0 and the largest 8. And thinner gauges of metal need smaller blade sizes. And I've got a chart here to show you which blade sizes are to cut which gauge of metal. And I'll also pop that on my blog, the link's in a card here. This chart also includes the drill bit sizes for piercing work. So as you can see from the chart, the 8/0 is used for 26 gauge metal, which is 0.46mm thick, going up to the size 8 for 12 gauge metal, which is 2.64mm thick. Now, in addition to the saw frame and blades, you'll also need a bench peg to support your work. If you have a proper bench, these will just slot in, but you can also get clamps like this one. Cut a notch in it if it doesn't have one already notched. Now, lubricant is also really useful. It'll make sawing easier and extend the life of your blades. I have beeswax here. There are plenty of other types you can buy, and Burr Life is one of them. And finally, you'll want some files to finish your edges after sawing. You'll want a large flat file for sawing the edges and straight sides, and a selection of needle files for tight corners and pierced work. So let's get started with some sawing. So I've got my sheet here and I've drawn on the shape that I want to cut out with permanent pen. You could also draw it on a piece of paper and attach that with a dry glue stick, or even use a sticky label. And we first need to fix the saw blade into the frame. Now the sheet I'm using is 1mm thick, which is 18 gauge, so I've got a size 1 blade here. And if you just run your finger gently down the blade, you can tell which direction the teeth are. One side is smoother than the other. And you want to be cutting on the downward stroke, so you want those teeth to be facing you, so the smooth direction is towards you. So I'm just going to place the bottom end of the blade into the frame. And then I want to put a little bit of pressure on the frame and tighten up the other end. And there is a correct tension. It should be tight, but not too tight. I saw a great quote by Donald Dietz, which sums this up perfectly. It should be a medium-pitched ping. A high-pitched tink is too tight, while a low twang is too loose. And then I'm just going to lubricate the blade. I like to go down both sides and then down the middle. And keep adding lubricant regularly as you go. You'll get a feel for when you need to. So I'm going to start in at this point, and I tend to just hold the saw at a slight angle to get started. And then hold the saw upright. Now, a few things to remember: to let the saw do the work and go at a comfortable pace. It's not a race. But if in doubt, saw outside of the line, and you can file off the excess afterwards. And for curves like this one, you want to hold the saw in the same position and gently move the metal around. And just add a little bit more lubricant if you need it. and just gently work your way around the shape. Now I'm coming quite close to the end of this side, but my saw isn't quite deep enough to be able to cut all the way through. So I'm just going to gently back it out of the cut. And then I can come in from the other end to complete cutting that side. Now I want to cut across this top bit, which is fairly straight. And another great tip is if you're sawing straight lines, to hold the saw at a slight angle forwards. Just helps keep those lines straight. And I've gotten across the top. I could just cut this off as I did before, but I just want to show you the technique for getting around a tight corner. So you want to be sawing up and down on the spot and turning the metal. This in theory should mean you can pivot on the spot, although I've travelled a little bit. You can then continue sawing out the shape. So I'm just about to finish cutting out the shape. I couldn't pivot on that bottom point because again my saw frame isn't deep enough. So I've sawn in from the other side. And you just need to be a little bit careful as you get to the end and make sure your piece is fully supported on the bench peg. And there I've got my shape. Piercing refers to cutting a shape from the inside of the metal. You therefore need to start in the middle of the metal, so first you'll need to drill a hole. I've drawn on a little butterfly design I want to cut out of this piece. So first I'm going to use my centre punch to make a little divot. This will stop the drill skidding over the surface. And then I'm going to drill the hole in the centre of my design. Anywhere that isn't at the edge is fine. And I've referred back to my chart, which suggests a 0.66mm diameter drill bit, so I'm using 0.7. Then you need to get your saw blade into that gap. So I'm just going to undo the saw blade at the top. And then I can thread on the piece. And I want the design to be uppermost. So I need to thread it on so that's facing the top of the saw. I'll then hold it at the bottom so it's not hanging on the saw blade and interfering with tensioning that blade. And then I'll tighten up the blade as before. I can then add a little bit of beeswax onto the blade. And I'm ready to start sawing out the shape. So I'm going to start by heading outwards towards the line and then carefully sawing around the shape. And this time, to err on the side of caution, you need to cut inside the line. It can be a little bit more tricky because it's a smaller shape that you're cutting, but just go steadily around as before, remembering to move the metal, not the saw. And that's my shape cut. And then you just need to undo the saw blade again, take it out of the space. And I just need to file all the edges of the piece, to take off any excess, make sure I've got the shape that I want. I'll use my flat file for the outside edges. And I can use my needle files to carefully file that pierced butterfly. And I'll just keep filing until I'm happy with the resulting shape. I hope you found that useful. The real trick to sawing and piercing is simply practice to master their technique. I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, please press the like button below. Don't forget you can subscribe to my channel and head over to my website for more hints, tips and projects, plus that saw blade guide. Thanks for watching and I'll see you soon.